Hello everybody and welcome to Bread Garden Market's Turofile Club number 5. This month in the Cheese Club we are doing cheeses of Switzerland. Last month I kind of rambled on and on about Spanish cheeses and how underrated I thought they were. But Switzerland has them beat. I think Switzerland, in terms of the countries of Central and Western Europe, is probably the most underrated cheese country in the world. For a number of reasons, but most importantly here in the US, we just don't get, or haven't in the past, gotten a lot of their best cheeses imported. And that's because Switzerland doesn't export a lot of their cheeses. Switzerland is still very much a country based on regionality and tradition. And a lot of the best cheeses in Switzerland don't make it out of the villages or towns that they're made in. So unfortunate for us, great for the Swiss, obviously. And, you know, while a lot of us are very familiar with Emmentaler and Gruyere, certainly, or even raclette, which can be made certainly in Switzerland, but also in France, not a lot is known about Swiss cheese. And when I say Swiss cheese a fair amount, when I say Swiss cheese, I'm literally talking about cheese that is made in Switzerland, which is how that term is supposed to work. When I say Swiss cheese, think Switzerland. I know the Americans have this kind of, we have a bastardized version of Swiss cheese that we sell in delis, which is great. I love Swiss on my ham sandwich and my turkey sandwich, and you know, the holes are fantastic, but you know, Swiss cheese is cheese that is made in Switzerland. But you don't have any mention of things like Foster Case, Vacherin Fibrigeois, which we'll get to try in a little bit here, was rarely found in the US for a long time. You know, Etivas, which is incredible and ubiquitous in certain parts of Switzerland. You could find it everywhere. It's almost just as popular as Gruyere over there, especially in kind of the north central and eastern part of Switzerland. But here it just doesn't get a lot of love. Although, again, we're starting to see some Etivas cheeses here in the US, as Vacherin Fibrigeois as well. Foster Case you still can't get in the US. But, you know, it's even in as I was going over and reading over some things about Switzerland to get ready for the Cheese Club, you know, even my fantastic Oxford Cheese Companion book, which I love. It's the most comprehensive cheese book I think out there, and just a wonderful reference book. But looking for certain cheeses that I know are famous in Switzerland are not even in that book, like Foster Case or like Vacherin Fibrigeois, or Sprinz may be in there, but Sprinz is another Swiss cheese that is, like, I don't even know how to compare it. It's essentially, it's Parmigiano Reggiano, but made in Switzerland. It's aged just as long. It is just as delicious, almost. Parmigiano Reggiano still has my heart on that, and the best shredding cheese in the world. But Sprinz is such a close second. It is an amazing cheese. 3-4 years old. It just has so much flavor. Again, you don't see a lot of it in the US, and even in some of the most comprehensive reference books in the world on cheese tend to kind of miss out on these great Swiss cheeses. And I don't think the Swiss care that much. They're happy with their cheeses and with their wines and other types of delicacies that we never get to see over here in the US, and they're laughing all the way home, fat, full, and happy. So let's talk about Switzerland, I guess very briefly, in terms of what are we talking about, regionality, what regions are known for making Swiss cheeses, and how Swiss cheeses are talked about. So in general, in the cheese world, when we're talking about Swiss cheeses, a lot of times we're talking about Alpine cheeses. So when you hear someone say, oh, this is a great Alpine cheese, what are they talking about? Well, they could be talking about certain cheeses in France like Comté, but a large percentage of the time they're talking about cheeses that are made in the Swiss Alps and Swiss Alp regions. And so again, that's your very famous Gruyere. And it could be, so it's like, you have the Bernese Alps, which is kind of eastern eastern Switzerland in the Alps, and you have Jura. Jura is probably the most well-known Swiss cheese-making region in France. Over here in the United States, that is where you get kind of Gruyere. That is where you get tête de moine. Tête de moine is kind of the small round cylinder. You get the little griot, and you kind of shave off the cheese, and it kind of goes in circles, and it looks like a little, when you're done, it looks like a little carnation or a little rose. On some of the cheese boards we've done here before the pandemic, we did a kind of month of tête de moine, and it's really beautiful when you kind of shave it into a carnation shape, and a really delicious cheese. Vacheron Mont d'Or, which is a very, very famous washed rind softer cheese that's wrapped in spruce bark, is also made in Jura. And then you kind of have central and northeastern Switzerland. So you have Jura, which is the French-Swiss border. You have the Bernese Alps, which is kind of eastern Switzerland, still in the mountains, obviously. You have central and northeastern, where you're making like Appenzeller, which is another fairly well-known Swiss cheese here in the US. Toggenburg, and there's some sprints made there as well. Grauburger, which is in the very eastern part of Switzerland, almost like Liechtenstein, right on the Austrian border there. And we'll have a cheese that's kind of made in that general area, in the Toggenburg and Graubünden area, called Blumenkäse, which is a wonderful, wonderful raw milk cow's cheese. You have Pays des Notes, which is where you get a lot of your etivas, which is what we'll be tasting a little later as well. And then, of course, you have Valais, which Valais makes a ton of cheeses, but I think the only really one that we know here in the US is, of course, the famous raclette. So when people think Swiss cheese, they think Emmentaler, they think Gruyere. All great cheeses in their own rights, of course. Gruyere is always one of my favorite. They think of fondue, but Switzerland has so much more to offer, and we're gonna actually get into some of those fantastic cheeses right now. Our first cheese from Switzerland is Vacheron Fribourgeois, which is a wonderful kind of semi-soft, nutty cheese, or I guess it depends on the age of the Vacheron Fribourgeois in terms of how soft it is. This is actually classified as what they call extra, which means it's aged for a minimum of 3 months at least. It could be aged up to 6 months. As they get older and as you get into higher age classifications, they actually kind of shave the cheese. It gets pretty firm. You can shave it over vegetables or pastas or other types of dishes. Fribourgeois is actually the name of the cow used to make this particular cheese. It's always raw milk. And as I mentioned a second ago, it's actually always, it's really small production, so you don't see it too much here in the US, but when you do, I highly recommend that you pick some up. So kind of making a mess of it here as I'm screwing around with it, but as you can see, it is kind of semi-soft. It has a nice kind of flexible texture to it. It is very holy, so Swiss cheeses have holes in them. It's not a coincidence. It's the style of cheeses. A lot of the cheeses in Switzerland actually do have holes in them, and so the cheese smells great. It's usually made only in from milk in the summer months, when the animals, the cows, are feeding on kind of grass and like fresh spring onions and garlic and things like that. And yeah, I mean, it smells great. So it'll smell a little funky when you first open it up, but it's not overpowering at all. It's not mild either, though. It has a lot of really nice flavor to it. It is a little nutty, has a little bit of the umami, has a little bit of that kind of grassy, and a little bit of almost aged hay to it as well. Yeah, it's such a wonderful cheese. So we're talking, this is an Alpine cheese. This is made, like I said, in central western Switzerland, including the Jura region, where Gruyere is made, but this is quite a bit different from Gruyere in flavor and in texture. If I was going to pair a wine with this, it might be something like a Burgundy, actually. This would be, and I'm going to say, a lot of the cheeses we're going to have today are not something I would ever pair with like Cab. I would think like a wonderfully balanced, medium-bodied white would go really well. Something from Savoie, or even if you wanted to do like a nice, get something a little fatter, like a Marsanne-Roussanne blend or a Viognier. If you wanted to go reds, I would stick with kind of lighter reds for a lot of these cheeses we're going to do today, including the Fibourgeois. So Pinot Noir, particularly from the Burgundy region, would be excellent with this. But yeah, Vacheron Fibourgeois, excellent, excellent, small production, raw milk, cow, cheese. I hope you enjoy. Our next cheese from Switzerland is from the Pays d'Arnaud, which is a small region in Switzerland that is known for a number of different cheeses, but especially for this beauty that we just took out of the package, the Etivas. And just kind of, as a disclaimer, I probably should have mentioned in the first part of this video, I'm probably butchering a lot of these names and regions and cantons, but the point is to eat great cheeses. So yeah, literally just took this out of the packaging, and it's gonna be a little awkward for you guys, but man, this smells crazy. It's like a little smoky, a little briny, a little nutty, like kind of hazelnutty, like barnyardy, but man, it's got this briny cheese. And a lot of cheesemongers compare this, or briny smell. A lot of cheesemongers and people who have had a lot of Etivas kind of sing its praises as kind of what Gruyere used to be. It's a cheese that, in look, tastes very similar, or looks very similar, excuse me, to Gruyere. And certainly there is some Etivas made in regions that make Gruyere. It's not too far from, the area where this is made is not too far. It's kind of nestled in between Gruyere, which is a town, and then Valais, where raclette is made, and then kind of in between the two you have this region here, the Pays d'Arnaud, which is Etivas Central. But this actually smells so much different than a lot of the Gruyères I've had, even the cave-aged ones. This cheese here is, as I think every cheese that we're gonna have except for one, is gonna be a raw milk cheese. So again, we're talking about raw cow milk. This has been aged for 15 months. They can be aged as long as 30 months. And I cut myself off a little piece earlier. So we're gonna try that now. This smells so good. I can't. This is the best cheese I've had all year. So we're only 5 months into the year, but this is the best cheese I've had all year. This is amazing. On the palate, I get some of that brininess. I get a little bit of that smokiness, but just a touch. A little bit of the nuttiness. I get a lot of that brine, like salty olive. Like it tastes like a, or it's got this, yeah, like this, almost like Greek olive kind of flavor to it. And then a little bit of this barnyardiness, but it's not overpowering. It's like, it's not funky, it's just, and then almost like this mustardy thing going on to it. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have another piece of this. I have to wait a minute. This is the best cheese I've had all year. So, I don't know what else to say about this. Etivas is the cheese. This is the first time I've ever had this in Bear Garden. I tasted Etivas, another Etivas, years ago, and rather enjoyed it. I don't remember it tasting like this. I mean, great snacking cheese. I would love this on a sandwich. Like this would be, I mean, just a simple grilled cheese sandwich. If I had this on there, pair it with a little sharp cheddar. I would just pair it by itself actually, but this is awesome. So Etivas, 15-month aged. If I was going to pair it with the wine, since we're kind of doing some wine clubs here as well, again, I would probably stick to Pinot Noir Burgundy. I wouldn't do anything heavy. I wouldn't do a Tannic Bordeaux or California Cab. It will muddle these fantastic flavors too much. I think if I was going to do it with anything, I would do it with a sparkling wine, to be honest, just to kind of wash my palate in between the delicious bites of this cheese. I would want something that, I can't think of many things that would enhance this flavor. So I want something that's going to be clean and fresh and just kind of cleanse my palate. So that's why I would do kind of maybe a champagne or a similar type of sparkling like a Crementa Assas or Crementa Borgogna. But I hope you enjoyed the Etivas as much as I did. This is, I haven't done the other two cheeses yet, but I've had both before, and I'm telling you, this is the best cheese I've had all year. So enjoy it as much as I do, I hope, as I do, I hope, and we're gonna move on to cheese number 3. So I'm still tasting that Etivas. I mean, I still have that flavor in my mouth, and I realized when I was tasting it why I love it so much. One of my favorite cheeses in the world is Montgomery's, and Montgomery's is a world famous cheddar. It's considered, along with like maybe Keen's, maybe Lincolnshire Poacher, to be one of the 4 or 5, if not the best cheddar in the world. But what makes Montgomery so unique is that the way it's produced, and they've been doing it the same way now for quite some time, is that the flavors are kind of crazy and all over the place in the best possible way. And the flavor of Montgomery changes depending upon where you are in the wheel. It could be kind of musty and horseradishy and mustardy in one part of the wheel. It could kind of be sharp and herbaceous and pungent in another part of the wheel. And it kind of is really like, depending upon, you know, not even just different wheels, but again, where you are in the wheels, it's just kind of a wild ride. And it's always fantastic, no matter kind of what types of flavors you're getting from the cheese. But just that, there's like the wildness to it, and that's what I got out of the Etivas. It's like if Montgomery's had a Swiss equivalent, this would be the cheese. Anyway, let's get on to the next cheese, because I'm gonna yammer on about this forever. So this next cheese is a cheese that I thought would be my favorite, that I've had quite a few times, that I love. And it is a fantastic cheese in its own right, and it's called Blumenkäse. Blumenkäse is a variation of a cheese called Hornkukäse. So this is actually Blumenkäse. My apologies for mispronunciation again. We're talking, this is made kind of more central eastern Switzerland. They're made by horned female cows. Not very often you see female cows that are horned, but it does happen. And Blumenkäse is very similar to, or Hornkukäse, excuse me, is very similar to Gruyere in terms of taste and flavor. It's a really good Gruyere, really nice cave-aged Gruyere, and Hornkukäse are very similar. What they do to Blumenkäse that makes it a little different is that they actually will coat the rind of the Hornkukäse with edible flowers and make Blumenkäse. And so it's a cheese that we've carried usually just around Christmas. It's something we bring in for the holidays and people love it. I put it on the cheese board this past week and was surprised by how many people, I don't know why I was surprised, but that was a lot of people's standout cheeses, or standout cheese for the cheese board this past weekend. And it's got, you know, it's got like a little bit of a barnyardy funk that a lot of great Swiss mountain cheeses have, especially if they've been aged. But the floral component to it gives it kind of really a unique herbaceous smell. But yeah, this is like caramel, and beef broth. And really, like caramelized onions, like wow, this is so deep and rich. Yeah, it's almost like, holy crap. It's like the beef broth is what really comes, but it's more of like, it's almost like a beef broth with soy. And I get like nice, almost brown, like toasted brown sugar. Like if you just toasted brown sugar further and kind of, I'm at a loss for words. This is the most intense of the three. Whereas Vacheron Vibourgeois would be kind of a little milder, but still have that kind of, so we're doing like degrees here of flavor. So this is kind of along the track of that Vacheron Vibourgeois, that first cheese we had, but flavor intensity maximized exponentially out to the 900th degree. Yeah, now I don't know if I like this or the Etivas better. I'd be interested to see what people think about this. This is a little riper than most of the Bloomin' cases I've had in the past. But it's French onion soup. That's what it is. It is French onion soup. I'm eating a cheese version of French onion soup. And just taste it. I mean, I'm not lying. I'm giving it to you on Thursday. And you're gonna have it and you're gonna be like, yep, that's what it is. So I was trying to figure that out. I tasted it the other day and I had the beef part of it, and it's an amazing cheese. And this is why I love Switzerland so much, because you have these varying degrees. People think, well, like Gruyere and Hornkoekkäse and Blumenkäse, Etivas, all kind of have a similar look to them, a similar feel. For some reason, we think they taste the same, and they could not be more different. This is so much different than the Etivas in terms of flavor profile. So much deeper, and has like a richness to it that a lot of cheeses you taste will not have. So Blumenkäse, it's a cheese with the flowers on it if you want more of it when you come in the store, but it's an incredibly unique tasting cheese, incredibly unique looking cheese, and something that I've been eating now for the last 3 or 4 years very happily. And this is one of my favorite iterations of it that I've ever had. So enjoy your French onion soup in cheese form. So our last cheese is not from Switzerland. It's actually from the US, specifically in Vermont. So the reason I picked this cheese is because it is based off of 2 Swiss style cheeses, one Swiss/French style, the other one Swiss. So it is the Jasper Hill, which is out of Vermont. I cut the little wheel in half here. It is their Winnemere, which is only made with winter cow milk, which is traditionally how the cheeses that it is based off of is made in France and then, of course, Switzerland. So the 2 cheeses from Switzerland it's based off of is Vacheron Mont d'Or, which is typically from the Jura region, so more Western France, and on Western Switzerland, excuse me, Eastern France, Swiss-French border. And there is Vacheron Mont d'Or made in France as well. I believe in France they just call it Mont d'Or though. So it's Mont d'Or, Vacheron Mont d'Or. Same kind of technique there. They only make that cheese with winter milk as well in Switzerland. And it's the same thing. It's a wash rind cheese. It has a very similar orange, that's kind of cracked a little bit, but orange style rind. It is, which is typical of wash rind cheeses, and then it's wrapped in spruce bark. So this producer here in the US, Jasper Hill, is one of, well, I think 3 now, but definitely 2 have been doing that type of style of cheese here in the US. So Jasper Hill does their Windermere, and then at Uplands in Wisconsin, in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, they also have a cheese that comes out a little earlier than the Windermere, called Rush Creek Reserve. They're also the people who make Pleasant Ridge Reserve, but the Rush Creek Reserve comes out in kind of, I guess, early fall, and then you can usually have it throughout the winter, including up and through Christmas. And so those two cheeses are based off of Vacherin Mont d'Or. And then the second cheese it's based off of is another Swiss, supposedly masterful cheese. I have no doubt, I've seen pictures of it, but it's kind of a cheese that's become a little bit of my white whale, the Foster Case. I have never had Foster Case in my life. I would love to have some Foster Case. I haven't seen it. Like, I've been to France and Spain, Italy, I've been to Germany. I haven't found it there at all. There used to be people in the US who said they had Foster Case. You still see it online occasionally from like iGourmet or something, but I don't know how long ago that was, and I don't know when they had it, but it's not available. I have been lucky enough to have had Vacherin Mont d'Or a few times, and it is wonderful. It is one of my favorite cheeses in the world. And when Upland does Rush Creek Reserve in a really spectacular year, and when Jasper is doing Windermere in a really spectacular year, they are some of my favorite cheeses just in the world. So I was a little worried because we're at the very end of Windermere season. So typically you don't get Windermere this late. So I got like the tail end of the very last batch from a particular vendor, and I got it as like a little bonus cheese. As it gets older, past a certain age and gets riper, cheeses get riper. That could be a good thing, but a lot of times with wash rind cheeses, as they get aged, they become very ammoniated, and a little ammonia is fine, and usually it'll kind of blow off, or you'll usually get it on the rind, but then the paste still tastes really good. But with older wash rind cheeses, sometimes that ammonia smell doesn't go away, and then you can't get anything other than that ammonia, not only out of your nose, but out of your taste buds, and it ruins an otherwise superlative, world-class, some of the best in the world cheese. But to my great surprise, the Windermere was holding up outstanding, and it's super gooey now, so I kind of have it on my finger. And I've had this cheese 4 times now, I think, this year. I think 3 different batches. As ripe as that is, that might be my favorite I've had this year. It is a little on the riper side, but it doesn't have any of that ammonia really at all. It's actually tasting beautiful. It's smoky, bark, like woodsy, and bacon. It's like smoky, woodsy bacon, and it is beautiful. And this is very much along the lines of what Vacherin Mont d'Or tastes like, and supposedly very much along the lines of what Foster Case tastes like. But Foster Case is my great white whale, and I'm still looking for that. So even though we're talking Vermont, enjoy it. Pretend it's a Swiss cheese. Pretend you're in the mountains of the Gers, eating a delicious Vacherin Mont d'Or in the winter or early spring. And I hope you've enjoyed the cheeses as much as I do. The Spanish cheeses last month I really loved and enjoyed. I think these cheeses actually surpass a lot of those cheeses just in terms of the depth of flavor and just the interesting flavors you get. Again, nearly all of these were raw cow milk cheeses, except for the Windermere. They kind of have the same general look, and even to a certain degree, the same general texture. But you could not ask for 3 better examples of those types of cheeses. And not only that, but how different each of the flavor profiles are. So really kind of open yourself up to tasting and hunting down some great Swiss cheeses. You will not be sorry. And even the Swiss cheeses that everybody knows, Gruyere is fantastic, Emmentaler is great. I love Tête de Moine. You can't go wrong. They're great melting cheeses, great snacking cheeses. They're great on sandwiches. And enjoy. If you have any questions, let me know. All of you now have my email. Certainly shoot me an email if you wish, or you can leave a note below. But I don't always catch those because I don't like to watch myself on these videos. So enjoy and have a great one. We'll see you next month.